Hello, as we enter the end of the mid part of October, remember that because I've been asking for a long time what the networks are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and terrorists. Collusion's preventing me from speaking about by stealing my identity with people, intelligence next to networks, at and next to all natures of crime scenes. Forgiveness is because there are collusions that everyone has. Otherwise, everyone's sensing for the breaching method, anybody doing other. Otherwise, even if it's a majority of people, that body, even if it is any united country or grouping of countries, this breaching method knew their syntax would be incapable of defending itself and of affording discern syntax proper for locations, areas, and states. The suburbs were designed for a torture, extortion, slavery method. And then America's founders were born. And they left declassified for us how, why, not to refer to our founders, plural, without understanding how James Madison is the only plural founder that we know the name of specifically. And they used his plan to counter extort everyone. There are proofs, even George Washington. No one even allows people to be honest about the extortion of George Washington, or it would have brought up James Madison's plan. It would have, James Madison, once he was a president / chief, he also didn't have free speech. This is changed so everyone gets away with pretending things are debatable that are not. The names of the people, the sciences, the experts, they have obligations by nature for their short words. They're using them. They're criminally. They came to where they are grouped together. This breaching method uses all location /s, where everyone already had a collusion /s that no one wanted. Like with how slavery had been entrenched northern colonies and southern colonies. That's not clear, not because people didn't do their homework, because that homework and the campus's side of it, both sides are bridged from off the campuses, off all locations /s, everywhere the human species body has a name. And then further, hyper additionally, on off places with databases, relativity discernible. And then further, with campuses hyper additionally, collusion /s, right where no one wanted collusion /s, but it's made anyway. And then everyone's styles of motivations, narratives, needs, nature, forcing other things, others ourselves blamed rather than the hyperform breaching methods rolls with it. The breaching method told you guys how to think regarding descriptions of how the breaching method replaced what black pupils, whites of eyes shows us, demonstrates to us by nature's identity of relationship to itself, unchangeable. We can ignore its system, that's not changing it. And it just demonstrates. And the breaching method knew that nature would have those demonstrations and would have roles with fake integrity, suits and ties, counters, exceptions. A through Z, styles, needs, natures, having sensed for the breaching method, having self-value, that having had inherent active to them, progressive to them, the syntax quality aspect /s in natures /s, like wrongdoers, wrongdoing on a mass scale. For example, regarding black pupils, whites of eyes, if someone tries to use that as evidences, millions have tried to use natural things like that. The nature shows us, to show us that there was something unnatural in place, entrenched through America's history. In other words, something that was only natural as criminal insidiousness nature. Nature itself shows us, I'm not even a lawyer. Lawyers too, originally and still, all sides of criminal and civil cases, lawyers forcing quality fact-cheating nature, aspects of fact-cheating nature. You know, uh, that is, in other words, they're incapable of defending their logic and nature of logic and affording to be brought in all the things that are relative. You know, and they're going to charge for every little thing. They're making things up. They have a whole wire of mail crime acts and methods with the interbranch. The differences of guilt are manifest. Use/s by the other names involved, with the other name to be named as the breaching method. But to discern it, we have to discern the scientific value of the breaching method first and its relativity to collusion/s, which are discernible where there is replaced what both our founders and what nature itself communicates and communicated about how the breaching method reassigned black people's whites of eyes, reassign the value of what native means, as value as. So we are a human species body of individual bodies and names and generated by that which is generating totally different species bodies. Each one of them made up of a whole bunch of individual bodies. So that we could discern its individual identity of value progression. My name is Anthony Wall. I was next to the World Trade Center towers the morning of the attack. There are co-defendants, various natures of federal criminals, and ones tied to them, like a Thaddeus Grabowski, a Dominic Lapriata, and a John LeConte, and a John LeConte and his family have roles intercampuses with predicate acts against me, and with people involved with untimely deaths, even if they are made up, involved with other organized crimes and putting fake things in databases, using true things to cover that up, playing stupid with subject treatments, forging and switching names into branch as timed collusions with names on all sides of criminal and civil cases, interstates, and the same ones that are involved further with a principal upskirt nature. With also Whiting Forensics has a Joshua Julian and a Joshua Schumack and a Joshua Stryker involved with a whole bunch of people that know my name. I don't even know their names. Involved at Trinity College with people with untimely death. And that's in Hartford, Connecticut, with people on my street in Wethersfield and a whole bunch of people tied to them. At the time, people from other areas made confessions to me, intercities. Now, some of those people made confessions regarding their roles with murders and the people involved, including like probation officers, things like that. And they have personal and professional roles with corruption with the relative body dumping spots and murder spots and where they live, which is, everywhere, but along roads and routes with people next to the campuses involved with that relative identity theft, fraud, slanders. See, on a mass scale, people have identity theft, fraud, slander styles as countries A through Z systematize count as exceptions. The styles that are manifest relative to nature's demonstration /s of everyone rolls with systems tactical ulterior from how we are a system generated by it's one that generates all group differences, or it shows us that we are, have been, or even the second we will be using systems tactical ulterior than its own. I mean, ulterior from its own, let alone tactical ulterior from its own in all self-valued roles, all self-valued collusion /s, specifically to keep the future incapable of, self-valued roles with everyone having had in the future. Sabotage means to look back and be honest about details in the past, as the active is doing now about the past. You guys have had replaced what our founders left declassified to be communicated for themselves, plural. In other words, and James Madison, the only one we know the name of specifically, was a founder, and they were all using his plan. Where James Madison's plan is the only correct answer, the counter extort, everyone was forced to break the laws of their own that were the value as their own torture, extortion, slavery. Oh, but they wanted that, so they weren't forced to. They were forced to. It wasn't, in other words, no one wanted rules with slavery. In other words, the only reason there appeared to be exceptions is because the same breaching method that it hurt women, every single woman, even when they helped them. It helped them in criminal and seditious nature. It has collusions to keep its criminal and seditious nature as a positive and negative treatment, syntactically appreciated, names treatments, difference treatments, therefore names treatment. Through how and why we are, how the breaching method operates with everyone's self-value, collusion /S with the United States, pretending things are debatable that are not, like that we are a bridged system. Native Americans have tried to communicate this, but see, they are forced to entertain. Think postures of integrity pretended ever having spoken at countries A through Z. And so, and where there are real excuses for that, every real excuse is used as a truth is used for lies. As truth used to screen lies. As roles used to blame guilt with it. Oh, it's this person's fault. It's that person's fault. Oh, it's because these people over there are hyper additional or attacking. And there's even more than that. Think about what was behind how sickly, non-distinctly, not just sickly, distinctly different countries, different international companies, overt criminal enterprises, private ones, terrorists, witch trials court. Why is there a witch trials court next to Webb House? We'll examine it. And why is Webb House now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum? In like founding locations across the country, why do they have James Madison's plan left out from the only proper telling of those places? Because the breaching method stayed entrenched. Because the breaching method measures and maintains self-value collusion /S, or it senses that body, and it shows the other bodies they have to, sense. Look, this person's using reason that shows it. Someone just needs black people's rights of eyes, and principles that we know we all agree about, to make that quality of fact. We're supposed to have the quality of fact sheet nature of the Constitution on a bridge at all locations, not only before courts. People that have readings of law, they can't defend that on paper because, with exceptions, like they're leaving out exception nature. They had the breaching method many ways, more ways than our founders, more ways than even nature. Influence over the syntax, the convictions, let alone the convictions with guilt and with difference /S, of the names of the people of the sciences, the names of the experts, the names of the people of the religions. The religious books were written with consciousness that the people that defend them would be the same problem, because everyone came to these abridged campuses. Everyone has been postured, in other words, using criminally foreign influence, fact, nature, quality aspects of nature, self-value, collusion, pretending it's debatable. If someone says, oh, well, so and such was our founder, anyone other than James Madison or Native Americans. But we don't know any Native Americans specifically the name. They didn't have the security, just like the rest of the colonists didn't. There were overt criminal enterprises with laws that were off the books. Terrorists, in other words. This is why then they go speak about law and order. They are being used to measure. They can't speak about law and order. The people countering each other too. At countries A through Z, the suits and ties, counters, exceptions. They are collusion /S clearer than day. Self-value use /S of those clearer than day. Quality aspects and natures inherent to people's fact, human nature, quality aspects of nature that are reliant upon things pretended debatable that are not. Like in other words, when they use Thomas Jefferson wrote this now that. Thomas Jefferson wasn't James Madison. There was still slavery entrenched northern colonies, southern colonies. People don't vote on things like slavery. If you're voting on slavery, you're showing that locations, areas, and states, the interbranch, the intelligence tied to them, there's still criminally foreign impulse to the rest of the countries, all grouped in an independent tactical terror from how nature shows us to be. Unified species body, independent species body, made up of a whole bunch of unified / independent simultaneous bodies. Manifest that way because of how it shows us its system. Otherwise, we're using abridged systems. This breaching method knew that nature would be demonstrating, while it's demonstrating we're using abridged systems, it's demonstrating a human fact, human nature breaching method. For example, is and was one of those things that all those crazy laws against human difference, against difference / therefore against human differences, like male, female, black pupils, whites of eyes, against the very nature that projects this to us unabridged communications. So those communications are abridged, where we are hyperditional nature, where we are a special difference. We could ignore this, but our special difference, Earth's through us, we're not as the rest of Earth. The only reason it has lasted so long is because the rest of Earth, the rest of the species bodies, they don't have criminal foreign influences, let alone self-valued criminal foreign influences. Self-valued torture, extortion, fact, human nature, slavery methods / S roles. Just for an example, space means come out of nowhere. Imagine we took struggling suburban communities and we made designs where, better than free and subsidized. We made things out of nowhere. We go higher and above the streets, and the same streets so you could drive under it still. Just for an example, the space means would come out of nowhere. All kinds of square footage and natures of infrastructure that aren't as dangerous, like where they could catch on fire. See, we're in a semi-ancient trap. Oh, rap. Please, WFSB, Channel 3 News, do what's right. Get me off the fake conversations with you guys and with others. The intelligence at your location and next to them are also with the journalists, like a Roger Suzanne is one of the ones involved with organized crime acts in your stories. With you fake conversations with me, with you, with me, with others. You fake ties to little kids with doctors that weren't at all. And then as adults, too, you did that to me, too. I didn't even have a psychiatry doctor when I was a kid. There's a Leahy family at Hartford Hospital. There are ones with the name Lombardo involved people on my street with some untimely deaths and with some sexual and medical offenders of kids, with a Kevin Dillon and intimate ties to him, and with a former retired Wethersfield police chiefs and intimate ties to them and to their families, with the same house /S further with the Wethersfield Police Department, with falsified police reports, fake conversations with me, fake me being at the police station and speaking with them as a kid and then as an adult too, as ones involved with the World Trade Center attack, interstates, and all sides of the case in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center that morning, and the court itself proven afterwards that morning of the World Trade Center attack, presented to the panel of judges right before the attack, had been post-dated, legal papers post-dated from inside the court. All sides of the case, the court itself, their lawyers, their sources, they were also involved with predicate acts against me increasingly, but it was also faked for them, which is also evidence. But you guys don't follow rules because you have federal evidences, crime acts, and methods. These are also people with the state corrections offices and judicial branch offices of Connecticut and their sources who are involved interstates with Washington, D.C. and with New York City and with, the World Trade Center and spots and names next to it and conjunctive to it, like the Ninth Circuit Court next to it, again, and both sides of that case. As one's involved too, with the name Scalora, with a whole bunch of people involved with some untimely deaths on my street and predicate acts with officers switching and forging names and making confessions with the name Scalora, where they just bring up one name and then they make statements and then leave, where they have recorded predicate acts methods, where they're putting fake records, as the fire departments too, and their roles with Russians in Ukraine involved, with a whole bunch of their family members of fire departments and intelligence families running into high life aggressions at locations, at crime scenes, including campuses where and how they're still used for crime scenes, and through the bodies that are only ones supposed to allowed to counter. So how they have the agencies too, and with the security of the campuses, they have roles of wire crime acts and methods. Whiting forensics increasingly has digital evidence as crimes, with people on all sides of criminal and civil cases, including with Facebook, and people that work at Facebook are a whole bunch of directly and indirect roles with people on my street tied to a Joshua Julian, further with a principal upskirt nature. And more child abusers years as a kids, years apart, and they had roles forcing that one. And these are people with an O'Brien family and a Collusion family with Sandy Hook and their extended family members. Like DeMoro and Collusion said that Scalora was their extended family member. And a Scalora is one of the names that was brought up by Wethersfield police that was changing and faking, hiding digital evidences on Facebook with them. Interstates. People with the name Scalora have identity theft, fraud, slanders of people that have been putting fake things in campuses I went. I didn't even know them. They didn't even go to my campuses. I never saw them on a campus I went to in my life. Increasingly, a Fred Grisey has roles with some sexual medical offenders of kids and intelligence people involved with multiple bakeries. Has something to do with their roles with bakeries, with the Mayano family and others, with Elm Street and Rocky Hill and Wethersfield, involved with retired Wethersfield police chiefs and FBI Director Robert Luskin and his co-defendants and their family members, and people with conjunctions to that, like the state judicial branch officers, and all along Route 3. Mr. Neville repeated, sought me out to communicate confessions with them, pretend it wasn't a confession, and I didn't even respond. So even though Mr. Neville has roles all along Route 3 with a whole bunch of people involved with foreign and domestic intelligence families, involved with child abusers, leaders of kids, interstates and intercities and inter and intra campuses. Now, these are also people, his students involved him without him knowing too. And the FBI Director, Robert Luskin, and his co-defendants and their family members have roles with overt criminal enterprises and private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, involved with identity theft, fraud, slanders against little kids, putting fake ties and natures of ties between kids in grammar schools and middle schools and high schools and before and after that. Whiting forensics has been planting evidences about this. Increasingly, they have people with the Wethersfield campuses involved further with the Board of Education too. There are names next to it, like conjunctions to it, like a John DeMoro is further involved with Old Wethersfield, and a bunch of people involved with retired Wethersfield mayors and their roles with intelligence, with all kinds of natures of drugs and medicines, where they are directed to have rights to be doing that. But they use that to protect where they don't have the right. Has a big role with the people with a Brian Silver and a Leahy family that have been putting fake conversations and ties to people into databases with multiple courts and prosecutors and judges and their family members. They have their little kids involved with predicate acts. Forgiveness is because they are only capable of that. For what I caught them doing with the kids, that was done to themselves too. Get them on paper, one name in sequence, please. Fox Connected News, do what's right. Fox News, do what's right, please. CNN, too. Your sources, too. You guys all do it at the same time, you won't be in trouble. Just get them on paper. I've been asking you, get them into branch on paper, one name in sequence. The people private tied to them, too, like medical, foreign, and domestic, personally and professionally involved with a whole bunch of people in the British Superior Court, involved with all kinds of natures of organized crimes with kids, even women judges, black, white, female judges, involved with some black KKK, Confederate flag theme, Latino theme, Italian theme, of roles with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and sexual and medical offenders of kids, identity theft, fraud, slanders, and with the news attached. WFSB attached me to fake conversations with them at the same time, while WTNA sources put fake ties to me, and with their, in other words, with themselves too. And they've been doing it with people all along Route 175 and conjunctions to it and to that, from the founding locations in Old Wethersfield, like Webb House, now renamed the Webb Stevens Museum. Again, with a witch trials place next to it. And that's where George Washington had to come with James Madison's plan and counter-extort, force people to help us, help James Madison's plan. But they had that replaced. They had it replaced strictly distinctly when it was Webb House, strictly distinctly when it is Webb Stevens Museum. How that is the outcome / yes with founding locations across the country. How that's a maintained outcome / yes that was involved. Forgiveness is not / non-forgiveness. It's to be appreciated tactical terror that anyone will allow anyone to but you guys won't even let us hurt because you're making allegations against people when they try to use short words. And you're getting away with it because you're pretending not to realize that could be, and it is, recorded. All sides of criminal and civil cases, they have roles with putting fake things with databases, that's collusion with the crime scenes and layers of other names and group bodies. And not just this breaching method knew that it would get countries A through Z to blame things like criminal foreign influences for things that it caused, which we could label hyper-criminal foreign influences, for example. And then defend that, and counters to it would be defended too, leaving out the rest of the other name. The proverbial devil, the proverbial shaytun. This is more probable, especially when we put into context what is actually recorded, being and having been the value of the people who spoke for things like order, justice, freedom. James Madison, founders, plural. See president / chief. Suspend all disbelief. Who disbelieves? Get them on paper, one name in sequence. The British Superior Court, hurry up with the district court too. You have a bunch of people with the district court with their kids involved with overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and more sexual and medical offenders of kids, leaders of them forest, pretending a whole bunch of passions and emotions from backgrounds, and with Facebook. These are people with all sides of criminal and civil cases where they get locked in with the courts too, internationally. Where they can't treat any subject like Facebook. Facebook has collusions with World Trade Center predicate acts and with extremism syntax used to cover that up, where they're changing and faking evidences with whiting forensics, with a Joshua Julian, a Joshua Schumacher, a Joshua Stryker. What are they doing? Get them on paper, one name in sequence. There's a officer, Darth Vader with Trinity College, little coward with this Joshua Stryker, putting fake things and ties to me into databases. They have people who have roles with UPS years apart, who have time collusions with next to the campuses, intercities, and a whole bunch of people with their roles with intelligence families near me that I never even had met, that they could have roles with. That's how everyone's speaking through other. That's how good it is with this former director. Get them on paper, the Wethersfield police. Watch what I caught them doing. Get me off the fake conversations with them and into branch real quick, please.